Welcome back to the Joint Appropriations Committee. We are online running, I believe. Our sole subject for the rest of the day is you, Leanne. So welcome to the Joint Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much.
Turn your mic. There you go. Now you're alive.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman, Senator Perkins, and Representative Nicholas. I'm happy to be here. I got a little pep talk from Representative Larson before we started because he saw I was nervous. I appreciate being here, but you all are very intimidating to me. Senator Tro's making a face.
The more you do this, the less intimidating we get.
Well, and so I apologize if I'm a little bit nervous. I do want to say just a very quick thank you to Don Richards and to Karen Vaughn, because originally I was scheduled to appear in front of you Monday afternoon, but I will be in jury selection in a murder trial. So I had asked to be kind of rearranged and they accommodated me. So thank you.
Now that would be intimidating, trying a murder case.
That's my comfort zone.
Yeah.
This, not so much. So thank you very much to them.
I've defended a few.
You have, yeah. Yeah, it should be interesting.
Yeah.
It's a self-defense case. And so this will actually be the first time that I prosecute a case using the stand your ground self-defense theory. So, yeah.
Interesting.
It'll be
Mr. Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Will this be a capital case?
Mr. Chairman? No, Representative Schwartz, it won't. Frankly, because I'm in front of JAC, I think it's probably appropriate to share with you that my office and the Public Defender's Office cannot afford to do a capital case. And although that is always an option for the state, it's simply not realistic given all of the things that are attached to a capital case.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the Public Defender's Office is one of my agencies, and I have discussed with them over the years many times their allocation for capital cases. So I appreciate what you were doing.
Yes, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
While we're on that, did you have a Johns? Is that the right term, the Johns hearing? Did you have the Johns hearing in that case?
We have done John hearings here in this district, but we actually did not do one in the case that goes to trial Monday.
Okay.
In the end, the defense agreed to not pursue a John hearing if the state agreed to amend first degree to second degree, which I had already offered to do because the defendant was intoxicated at the time of the shooting. And there's a provision under Wyoming law that says if you're voluntarily intoxicated, you cannot be found to have the requisite intent for first degree. So that's how we avoided the John hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, please introduce yourself and go through your budget.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Leanne Manlove. I'm the elected district attorney in Laramie County, which is Cheyenne. I'm one of 2 district attorneys in the state of Wyoming. And that is a designation by statute. Once your community reaches a population of 60,000, then your county attorney becomes just a county attorney and your prosecuting attorney becomes a DA, and they're not combined. So in the other counties in the state outside of Natrona and Laramie, you have county and prosecuting attorneys. So if you want to turn to page 3 of Agency 151, Department Budget Summary Table, you'll see that the standard budget request is what we're presenting, 4.6 million that the governor has said that he recommends. There are also some department exception requests that total $112,078. And those are enumerated if you turn to page 13 of your budget book. You can see that that is 3 items. Those are discussed starting on page 11, 12, and 13. So the first exception request that you see on page 13 is for technology replacement. in the amount of $13,078. That's a recommendation from the state's IT division. When I went into office, the district attorney's office in Cheyenne was not on the state's IT program. We were not a part of the state ETS. And we had what I refer to as the super secret chocolate chip cookie recipe going on for our technology. It had been kind of combed together with baling twine and spit and some gum, and it just was not, I had serious concerns about security. So we had ETS come in and do an audit. They shared the concerns about security, and it took almost a year for us to migrate, but we're now on ETS. So their recommendation for technology replacement amounts to a little over $13,000. Then if you look at page 14.
Just to follow up on that.
Sure.
So we have this conversation with lots of different agencies. You know, the computer I have here, which is a state issued one, it's 2018. And so it's that 4-year model, but we try to encourage people to use them until they die versus, okay, they're 4 years old, so we're going to replace them all. My question is, the ones that you're replacing, how old are they? Are they 3 or 4 years old? Is there anything wrong with them other than their warranty goes away?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's anything wrong with them. They seem to be functioning okay. That's the recommendation from ETS. I think that's based on what they consider the proper life for those.
Yeah, and so what different agencies do it differently. Some agencies, and a lot of this is at our behest, we're happy to replace laptops, but if there's nothing wrong with them, and if they have a tighter budget, they just use them till they die or till they're sick or they got to replace them. And then they stagger them so that you do 2, 3 this year, 3 the next year, and that way you don't have one big chunk coming up at us. And you can move them around a little bit like that. And lately that's kind of been our practice and recommendation for most. So if we deny it or only grant a few of them, that's where that would come from.
Certainly, and I appreciate that. That is absolutely something that we would, be able to do. It's a replacement of 13 laptops, which is not, it's a little bit more than, it's about half
Yeah,
of the
half the
number of
office, yeah.
employees. All of our lawyers have laptops so that we're able to take them into the courtroom with us. We can use them for evidentiary purposes. Frankly, if you're sitting there and it's not your case that's been called, you can then attend to other business, go through email, that kind of thing.
Are they all, what kind of laptops are they?
Dell, I
Dell.
believe they're Dell. And if you ask me much more about technology than that, I'm gonna have to say I don't know. I apologize. I'm
Okay.
not a techno whiz-no person, so.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Priority number 2, and you see this reflected on page 14, cell phone and monthly charge. One of the things that we discovered is that we hadn't actually been enumerating that as a cost in our budget. So I went through and looked at how many cell phones we were using, how much we were paying for them, and literally asked everybody in the office who had one, how often do you use it? What do you use it for? And so we were able to really reduce that total number rather than every attorney having a cell phone, because you have a laptop and you can take that home if you need to look at email. So really, these are for the victim witness coordinators. There are 2. It's for my work cell phone. And then our juvenile attorney also would have a work cell phone. And the reason for that is that we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if a child needs to be taken into protective custody. And the reason for that is that under statute, we have to have a hearing, a shelter care hearing, then within the next 24 hours, unless it happens on a weekend, and then we do it first thing Monday morning. So whether it's law enforcement who's calling us or a dispatch from the 911 call center or a DFS, we need to have somebody who's available for child protective custody reasons. And then, when there's a very serious crime, then I'm always available. I'm available 24 hours a day, every day of the year.
So my only question, Leanne, is obviously you've had these phones in your office for a long time. And so it was just wrapped up in your general expenses budget. And that means that you've been paying for them out of your general expenses budget for the past few years.
Actually,
No?
we hadn't paid the bill.
For how long?
From what I could tell, there had been, for as long as I had been in the office, and then perhaps a year prior, I don't know what happened, but the bill never made it to us. So when I asked, hey, is there a way we can reduce the costs associated with our cell phones? That's when we started looking into it, and we couldn't find a bill. Well, how much is Verizon charging us?
Was the
Because you're
county
right,
paying for it?
we owned the phones already.
Mhm.
And so then it turned out that we owed money, obviously, because we hadn't received the bill. And I think it just was sent by email to somebody who'd no longer been at the DA's office. So,
So fortunately, you discovered that before all your phones went dead.
yeah, well, and that's the interesting thing, isn't it? That we hadn't paid the bill and they continued the service. I guess they knew where to find us, and so.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then if you look at priority number 3, this is the bane of our existence in the DA's office. We handle a little under 10,000 cases a year between our misdemeanors, all of our juveniles, and then our felony cases. And we keep track of all of that through a computer software program, a case management program. For 30 years, we used a program called Justware. And it was like, your friendly Toyota or Honda. It was very dependable. It wasn't fancy. It worked well. And so, of course, it was bought out by a company called Journal Technologies, who then notified us that it would sunset within a year and we could buy their product, eProsecutor, which had all of these. It was like going from a Honda to a Hummer. It had all these bells and whistles that we didn't need. It was super, super, super expensive. And Dan Itzen, who is my counterpart in Natrona County, his office has also used this Justware program. And so he and I eventually were talking to one another, and I realized he'd been quoted eProsecutor at 1/4 of the rate I had been quoted eProsecutor. And so he and I got together, we spoke with, the company representatives collectively, and we told them, listen, we don't need the Hummer. We just need the Honda that we've been driving. And so I think that company must have been hearing similar things from all over the country, because then they produced a new product that was more affordable, that was kind of in between those two models, that they call it an off the shelf. So it's not custom tailored to your agency, but essentially, it's like buying Word. Everybody has the same version of Word. And that's all that we needed. Unfortunately, that kind of migration from Justware to eProsecutor happened outside of the normal budgeting process. And so that was not an expense that we could have anticipated. And so that is why this $90,000 is included for our maintenance contract for our software. But everything that we do is driven by this software. Every piece of paper that we file in court, every person with whom our office has contact, whether they're a victim in a case or, the defense attorney. And then also that's how we're able to track our statistics. So that I could, in theory, go and tell you, in this year, we had this many of this kinds of case. So it's an extremely important part of the functioning of our office. And $90,000 may not sound like much to people who sit outside of this room, but it is a significant amount.
So the program is, in addition to buying it, then you have to pay a user fee per person, which is $2,000. The user fee is more than what you're doing computer costs.
Correct.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And it's one of those things, it's almost like, you have to have insurance. You can't not have insurance. And so the people in my office have to have access to that computer information. So for example, this body has made a policy decision that after your 3rd DUI, now that's a felony. Well, that's something that we have to put in our charging document. We have to notify the court, this is a 3rd or a 4th or subsequent DUI. Well, oftentimes, because there's a 10-year look back window for that DUI felony, people will have had a DUI, but it'll be just outside that 10 years. And sometimes you don't know that just by looking at someone's criminal history. You have to actually go into, the 11-year-old document and see, oh, their conviction was from 11 years ago. So it really does impact our ability to do our job, just even having access to the data, much less being able to generate the documents.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Manlove, is there any way that with these 10 licenses that you can toggle between them? So for instance, I've got a software application that I've got one license for, but it's on my server, and then I can toggle between two different desktops. So only one person can use it at a time, but I don't have two site licenses because I'm cheap. Is there anything that similar that you could possibly do, or is that just not practical?
Mr. Chairman. Representative Stitt, that's a good question. And that is the reason we're only requesting 10 licenses, which is fewer than half of the number of the employees in my office. Under our former program, just where everybody had a license, because we didn't have to pay $2,000 per user. But now we prioritize so that all of the legal assistants, our victim witness coordinators, and the juvenile attorney and I can access, we will all have a license.
And I see that Ventura County is asking for the same thing.
Yes, I believe that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I have a much simpler question. It's algebra. So I read the request and it asks for $20,000 per year for 2,000 for 10 people, which would be 40,000 for the biennium. And the request is for 90.
So what's the other 50?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. So this cost that we had to go to was because of the sunset date happened right away, essentially. So before we had an opportunity to know that that was going to be in our budget. My understanding is that in addition to paying that licensing cost, we then also have to pay $25,000 for the software itself.
So will that be ongoing, or will only the 40,000 be ongoing?
Mr. Chairman, the licensure costs will be ongoing, obviously. And then we worked with the Attorney General's office on the contract, my office and the district attorney's office in Casper, because there were a lot of provisions in there that if we exceeded a certain amount of storage space, then they could charge us more money. And so that's why eventually we went to this kind of like off the shelf online data program because it was significantly less expensive. But those figures are based on what it costs to buy the software and then what the licensure cost is for the biennium. And it's just one of those situations where I feel like we're held hostage, but it's a difficult place to be in when you need that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know how long you are committed to this contract?
Mr. Chairman. Yes, so we, and I'd have to go back to be absolutely certain, but I'm fairly certain that it's a 2-year contract that we committed to. And of course, we did look at other options and they did not meet our needs. We had a lot of demos from salespeople and I thought, gosh, if this is your sales demo when it's supposed to be the best, it's just not going to work. And that's mostly due to the volume of our jurisdiction. We prosecute more cases than any other jurisdiction in the state. Roughly, my office handles 1/3 of all criminal cases. The DA's office in Natrona County handles 1/3. And then the final third are spread among the other counties around the state. But we do, by a couple hundred cases, outpace the Natrona County Attorney's Office. And I think I think maybe part of that is attributable to the fact that we're at the crossroads of I-80 and I-25, and that can affect, your drug trafficking cases, so.
We're just more law abiding in Casper. Okay. So please continue.
So that is the amount that my office is requesting in the budget exception. I will share with you that I too believe in smaller government, and I put my money where my mouth is. So when my office had a 6.2 budget reduction as part of the executive branch's reduction, and then the work that this body did last session, I had to make some very tough calls in my office. And that resulted in me dismissing about 400 cases, because during that period of time, we were under a hiring freeze. And I lost several attorneys, either to other state government entities, or interestingly, sometimes the county attorney's office can pay a better salary for lawyers than what the state can in the DA's office. Now, that's not true of every county. That's not necessarily true of Niobrara, but if you look at Sublette County or Campbell County, some of the counties where they have higher level of income, that they're able to compensate their attorneys, and we're just not able to compete. So that budget reduction immediately required attention in my office. I also made an announcement October of last year when Laramie County implemented a mask mandate through the Laramie County Health Officer, that I would not prosecute people for not wearing face masks. And those two positions that I took as the district attorney have resulted in adverse action against my license through the Office of Bar Counsel. They are asserting that I am incompetent and unethical for having responded in the way that I did. And, we're all politicians in this room. Well, most of us are. And you're answerable to your constituents. The one thing about me that is perhaps different than the majority of this committee is that I can only do my job because I have a bar license. And so currently I'm under fire for those decisions, but they were responses to public policy decisions that the legislature made regarding our budget. So I don't want you to think that I come before you with budget exception requests lightly. I do not. They're very, very important to the functioning of my agency.
I appreciate that.
Does anybody else have, I hope I was able to answer everyone's questions.
Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to?
You have one clarification question on
Okay.
$90,000. We're just looking at, it's kind of looking at the math. I mean, it's 20,000 a year. And that's the good reference to Tucson County pointed out, that would count for 80. I'm looking at that. I just wondering if this, you've been on this for a while. I'm just wondering if the other amount.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure who's talking, but their mic is not on.
Your mic's not on.
My mic's on, at least my.
Yeah.
Okay, my mic's on. He's driving. We don't care about Senator Kinski. But anyway, the math would work out that's, that would be, that would be another half year, like from here to the first, and I just didn't know. I was just trying to figure out, because the numbers you gave us didn't quite add up. There was more, in fact, the numbers you gave us were actually more than the $90,000, but I don't know. And you don't have your fiscal officer next to you, but anyway, and you can supplement if there's information you found, like some of the questions are asked, you supplement and just let it, if there's anything.
Casper's asking for the exact same amount for the same thing, so we can ask it on Monday.
Okay, we can ask that again on Monday. It's just the numbers don't quite jive, but I mean, you actually, like I say, the numbers you gave us would actually exceed $190,000. So we'll figure it out.
Okay.
And if there's something else, like I said, if there's something up you want to, if there's something else you want to write, or you get out of here and there's something that comes up that, I should have told them that. You can send us an email or whatever it is, and we'll get distributed. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Thank you, Senator Perkins. I appreciate that, and I'll do that. And I'll let Dan Itzen know to be ready to answer the math question. I believe he testifies Monday.
With any luck.
Okay, with that, I think that's all we have.
Thank you very much.
For being here. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You all too.
No, Mr. Chairman. What now?
Don?
Don, we got any housekeeping that we need to take care of?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of items for members preparing for Monday. Staff are in the process of supplementing the Monday schedule. We'll probably try to add 2 agencies. We don't have confirmation on those yet, but for the committee's advance notice, we will try to insert the Board of Tourism on Monday morning and Game and Fish on Monday afternoon. There will be no supplement to Tuesday's agenda, which is comprised with the Public Service Commission, very short agency in the morning, followed by what I anticipate will be a fairly lengthy discussion of state construction. This is both the agency's operation as well as, I believe there are 30 state construction projects. This does not include K-12. That will be the following week. And then in the afternoon, the Department of Family Services are still scheduled to.
So on this department construction, we'll take on 0227.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, both agency 27 and 227.
Okay. With that, have a nice weekend, everybody.